the two ideas that it says in the beginning of the parsha. It speaks about, I'm not the beginning of parsha, I'm sorry. It speaks about how Moshe Rabbeinu was 80 years old, and how it speaks about the Yachas of Moshe Rabbeinu. All of this was in connection with Moshe Rabbeinu's taking the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. And we wanted to know what was those two ideas of Moshe Rabbeinu's Yichus and also his age, what bearing does it have on Yetzias Mitzrayim? So we explained that Moshe Rabbeinu, being the seventh generation, V'kol Hashvi and Chavivin, all the sevens are favorites. That just like Shabbos, that Shabbos is favorite. So it's the level of Shabbos which has to do with Shem Havaya that's higher than Seder Ishtalshlus, and the level of Shmoinim, the level of 80, is the 8th level when counting the spheres upwards from the lowest level, that's from Malchus. So the number 8, which is 8 times 10, which goes all the way up to Bina, which is like in Bina is Meir Atik, and it's a level of the level of Gvura El Yoina. It has to do with Yovel, higher than the Seder Ishtalshlus. So that was Moshe and Aaron had to be 80 years old because they had to have this level of the Gvura El Yoina. Based on these two things, that the lineage of Moshe Rabbeinu was the 7 generations, which number 7 indicates the level of Shabbos, the level of Shem Havaya, higher than Seder Ishtalshlus, and 80 as well indicates this level of higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. Now it will be understood that Rebbe says the connection with Yetzias Mitzrayim. Ois Daled, line 6, on the 4th page of the Maim. Pisa moving according to this was understood. Shehein Seder Yachas Shal Moshe, both the order of the lineage of Moshe Rabbeinu, Vehein he Yosef ben Shmoinim Shana, both, and also his being 80 years, Shayach v'Negel le'in Yetzias Mitzrayim, is connected to and matters to the idea of going out of Mitzrayim. Because the general idea of going out of Mitzrayim is going out of constraints and boundaries, including also going out of the constraints and boundaries in Kedusha itself, because Seder Ishtalshlus is what's could be called, to a certain degree, Meitzorim or Mitzrayim the Kedusha. It's boundaries of Kedusha. From the boundaries in the world of Kedusha, from Seder Ishtalshlus in Kedusha, Nishtalshel Mitzrayim Kipshuta came down by chain descent. The literal Mitzrayim down here, that already that's bad enough. And on top of that, V'ad Golos Mitzrayim Chulu, until the fact that Yidden are in exile under that Mitzrayim, that's even worse. All of that started with the Mitzrayim, the Kedusha. So that's the whole idea that Moshe, both his age and his lineage, has a bearing on leaving behind all these constraints and limitations. So he goes on line 12, for this, there's a need in a greater revelation, beyond the categories, beyond the entire definitions of the world. That's why the redemption was specifically through Moshe, through Avraham. He was the 7th generation to Avraham, and all the 7s are beloved and loved by Hashem especially. This means by Moshe Rabbeinu there's the revelation of Yud Kei Vav Kei that we spoke about earlier. Yud Kei Vav Kei has to do with Shabbos the 7th, because it says Shabbos Lavaya. It's a level of Shabbos that's beyond the 6 days of creation. This is also the reason why Moshe had to be 80 years old. That's the level of Bina, counting to the 8th level, 8 times 10, going from bottom up. It's beyond the 7 days of building, beyond the 7 days of creation. Now he's going to explain more about this level of Bina. As it's known, in Bina there are 2 aspects. Though sometimes we do not differentiate between them, and that is tvuna ubina. Even in Tanya, we make reference to the idea of tvuna versus bina. The inyan ha-tvuna, hu inyan ha-seichel, kefisha shaykh lepoil mamish. It's the idea of intellect, the way it's connected with action, the way it's already manifesting in the world. As opposed to bina is the level of intellect, the way it's on its own. In Tanya, he says that tvuna zarei bina has to do with the midas. That's why tvuna is made up of the letters ben u bas. Ben goes on ava, bas, daughter goes on yira. But be that as it may, it's a similar concept. Tvuna is already that aspect of bina that has to do with action, and bina is just pure theoretical ideas. So the Rebbe is going to explain an example of the difference between the two. Just like in studying the topic of two people holding on to a cloak. And there's a whole discussion about this person said he found it, etc., etc. The Gemara discusses this. Top of page says, when you're dealing with the tvuna part of seichel, daitoi hi ala talis. His mind is now, okay, what is going to happen now with this talis? In other words, it's the practical application of the halacha of this discussion. As opposed to the level of bina, his focus is on the idea, on the theory. Okay, if this person is holding it, that person's holding it, this person claims this person claims that. He's not really interested in the practical ruling over here. He's out investigating the concept. He's analyzing the concepts at play over here. And even higher bina is to analyze the thing, not just the way it's in this world, but the way this discussion of Shnai Moich and Betalis is in the spiritual worlds. And the Rebbe says it's not in a way going away from the idea, it's actually the core. The primary idea of Torah is it's Hashem's Torah, like we say, making the brachas on the Torah. As we know, making the brachas on the Torah has to precede all Torah study. Like it's known concerning those that were punished because they did not make a bracha on the Torah before they studied Torah. What do we say in that bracha? V'nasan lanu es Torah sai. He gave us his Torah, meaning originally the idea of Shnai Moich and Betalis and every concept in Torah is the way it's learned above, divorced from the physical things down here. The way it's spoken about above, it's not. It's on the topic on the conversation is not about a cloak, and it's not about two people that found it. It's much more spiritual. That is even a higher level of bina, taking the idea the way it's above. Move on. It's understood, despite what we just now said about bina versus tvuna. The Rebbe says that doesn't mean that tvuna has no place. Surely there has to be, it's obvious, the Torah study has to be for, and as it matters in action. The greatness of study is that it brings to action. But despite the fact that we need to study it in regards to action, the main idea of Torah is beyond and above the world. And that's the level of bina. Concerning what the Chazal state. It says Hashem created the world with 10 things, and it's a lot of it is similar to the 10 spheres, certain a lot of the things that he mentions. But there's an interesting nuance of a difference. One of the differences is Niskara inyan the tvuna v'loya inyan the bina. What's mentioned is tvuna and not bina. How come? Because the kibchinas tvuna shayeches la'olam, because the level of tvuna has a connection with the world. Only bina is beyond the world. That's the level of 80 years. That then that Moshe was at 80 years old. When he stood before Pardoi, because 80 years is the level of Bina, not the level of Tvuna. The level is completely removed from this world, and through the level of Bina, it's completely removed from this world, it was possible to have the idea of the Geula. Ois Hey, line 20. Amnam, though the idea of going out in Mitzrayim had to be specifically through Moshe, like we just now explained, that he was the 7th generation and he was 80 years old. And this itself, it's not just enough that he was the 7th, he also had to be 80 years old. Still in all, there also had to be the empowerment from the forefathers, from the Avos. This is what Rashi explained at the beginning of our parsha on the pasuk, Vayomer Elov Ani Havaya, and he told him, I am Havaya. So Rashi says, quote, Loi lechinam shlachticha, I did not send you for naught, ki im lekayim dvorai shedibarti la'avos harishonim, rather to fulfill my words that I spoke to the early forefathers. So we see that connection between the Avos and what Moshe Rabbeinu did. It's not just the Avos were in the past, they were in Chumash Bereshis, now we're in Chumash Shmos. It's the parsha of Moshe Rabbeinu, it's the Chumashim of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Avos play no role. No, the Avos are transmitted and are affecting what Moshe Rabbeinu needs to do. To such a degree that we find that the entire redemption is connected with the birth of the Avos. Like it's brought down the Gemara, ben Nisan noildu Avos. In the Avos were born in the month of Nisan. As it says, Vayhi b'shmaynu shana, top of page Yud. It was in 80 years, V'arba'mei shana, in 400 years, in other words, 480 years. Let's say Bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, to when the Yidden left the land of Mitzrayim, Bashana Revis, in the 4th year, B'chodesh Ziv, in the month of Ziv, meaning B'yerach shenoldu boy Zivtanei Olam. What's the month of Ziv? Ziv is from the word ray, and the idea of the ray indicates that they were the ones that illuminated and shined up the world. The Avos were born in that month. And then Gemara also continues, Benisan, Nigalu Benisan, Asin Ligal, and Nisan they were redeemed, and Nisan they were in the future they will be redeemed. So therefore we find that the Avos' birth had an impact on the Geula, that this would be the same month of the redemption. How come? So he says, "V'hainu lefisha mailos ha'avos gedola beyoser," because the quality and the advantage of the forefathers are very great, and therefore they empower Moshe Rabbeinu to do what he does with all of his powers. Like it's also brought down the medrash on the pasuk, and I appeared to Abraham. Hashem told Moshe, Chaval al de avdim v'loy mishtachim. It's a pity for those that are past, those that are lost, and are not to be found. In other words, that the Avos are gone, not here anymore. Many times I revealed myself in Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and they did not question my attributes, they did not question my decisions. As opposed to you, Moshe Rabbeinu, at the end of the previous parsha, you said, why did you make such a terrible thing for the Yidden? To such a degree that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, in regards and in comparison to the Avos, in the place of great ones do not stand. So therefore we see how great and how powerful the energy of the Avos word to help Moshe and empower him in what he has to do. In addition to this, also in the advantage and quality of Moshe, that we said that he's the seventh generation of Avraham, and all the seventh are beloved. Mudgeshes Milos Avraham is also emphasized the quality and advantage of Avraham. Is a where you talk about all the seventh are favorites. The seventh is a seventh to a certain level. He's the seventh to the first. Also in this, the main thing is the first. And therefore, so Avram's power and the Avos's power are as well very important and an empowerment for Moshe to do what he is doing. So now the Rebbe is going to elaborate on this. What does it mean, and what's this idea about the Avos's empowerment and help that Moshe Rabbeinu on his own doesn't have? Oizvav, line 17. This will be understood by prefacing an analysis of the expression of Rashi that I am here to fulfill my words that I spoke to the early forefathers, to the first forefathers. What's the emphasis on the word Rishonim? Seemingly it's not understood. Why does he have to add the first ones, the early ones? It's not like there are any other Avos. You could say they're earlier Avos, they're later Avos. There's an expression, Nevi'im HaRishonim, and there's Nevi'im HaAchronim, the early Nevi'im and the latter Nevi'im. But Avos, there isn't such a choice. There's only three Avos. So there's only three Avos. Why would you have to say Rishonim? What are you distinguishing them from? There's no latter Avos. Like the Chazal say, Ein Karen La'avos L'shloisha. We only call the term and the title Avos only to three. The rest are not called Avos. So therefore, if you say Avos, that's enough. You don't have to add the word Rishonim. So the Rebbe says, we can explain this according to what it's known. The Rishon Koi al Sfiras HaKeser. The word Rishon refers to the Sfira of Keser. And that's why the Avos are called the first ones. Because the idea of the Avos is the midas of Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes. And we know the root of the emotional attributes is in the level of Keser. So therefore, when we're talking about Avos HaRishonim, we're talking about not just the midas, but Rishonim, the way they are rooted in Keser. The idea behind this is the mitzad madregas Avos, k'fi sheyachim the midas Chesed, the Gvura, Tiferes, the level of the Avos, the way they're associated with the midas. That Avraham is the level of Chesed, Yitzchak is the level of Gvura, Yaakov is the level of Tiferes. In these specific and detailed avodas, the avos are distinct one from another. For example, Avraham was known in his service of welcoming guests. Avodas Yitzchak the avodah of Yitzchak was digging wells. Top of page Yud Aleph, avodas Yaakov being an amaklis, and the avodah of Yaakov is concerning the hewing out or the sticks that he formed into different designs, etc., in front of the trough by the sheep. But despite their distinct, unique, each level specific and delineated, there's a higher level by the Avos mitzad shorshim because they're root in the level of Keser. Therefore, they're called the early Avos. That's an idea. It's beyond the division of details. Concerning this high level, it says to Moshe, in the place of great ones, do not stand. That's the way the emotions, the levels of the Avos are in their full growth. They're fully in their greatest, most mature, developed, and heightened state. And their root and their source and the level of Keser. That over there in Keser, they're beyond even the level of Chochmah, the level of Moshe. So true. There's Moshe Rabbeinu, who is usually associated with Chochmah, and the others seemingly are lower because they are Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. But then there's the level of the others Harishonim, the way they are part of Keser, which transcends Moshe. This is what Hashem told Moshe, that his mission and his job to take the Yidden out of Mitzrayim, is to fulfill my words that I spoke to the early forefathers, to the Avos of Rishon. Hainu she'inin yitzias Mitzrayim kosher madreges ha'avos k'fi she'em b'shoshem b'chinas ha'keser rishonim shalomayel mischalkos. That level of going out of Mitzrayim is connected with the level of the avos, the way they are in their root, the level of keser, the rishonim, that's beyond division. V'inyan hakrisis bris v'ashvua chulu shalomayel metam v'das. This is also what's brought down, that Hashem said that he made a covenant and he made an oath with the Avos. The entire idea of an oath and a covenant is beyond reason and knowledge. So Moshe Rabbeinu was the level of Chachmah, like it's brought down many places in Chassidus, and therefore he had questions. But the Avos didn't question, and the commitment of Hashem to the Avos was also in a way of beyond question. That's why it was a level of a krisis bris and shvua, the level of an oath, is something that even according to Seichel, things don't look like they should be joined together, and that's the same thing by a treaty of a krisis bris, of making a covenant. Still in all, we are anyway together. We are anyway joined together. That's the idea that the Eibishter made this krisis bris for with the Avos. V'zeu, she says in line 17, V'zeu gam mashagul b'Mitzrayim hoyshe b'chodesh Nisan shaboynel da'avos. This is also the reason why the Geula from Mitzrayim was in the month of Nisan, that in that month the Avos were born. And by prefacing the explanation of the advantage of a birthday also over the day of a passing. Though the Chazal said, Al tamim ba'atzmach ad yom moisach, do not have confidence in yourself until the day when you pass away. You never know how you're going to turn out. From this understood that there is an advantage in the day of a passing of a person, because when he's done his entire mission, he's fulfilled his entire avodah, there's over a birthday. And then we do not know how it's going to be the avodah in actuality. Despite that advantage, on the other hand, we see an advantage in a birthday over the day of a passing. Like it's brought down the Gemara, the story with Haman. When the lot fell in the month of Adar, he was very joyous. Amar Nafali Pura by Moshe, that the lottery fell out in the month that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, so he thought it would be bad for the Jews. He didn't know that on the 7th of Adar he passed away, but also that on the 7th of Adar Moshe Rabbeinu was born. Rashi explains, the birth is sufficient to atone for the passing. Seemingly it's the other way around. Passing away, death, undoes the birthday, not the other way around. Still no, Rashi says it's worthy, it should have been that the birthday should atone for the day of death. Because the idea of this talkus is connected with avoid in actuality, the way the body performs it. It already has to do with reason and seichel, the way it's already divided into details, similar to what we said about Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the way they're individual details. As opposed to the advantage of the birthday. It's connected with the revelation of the soul itself, even before doing the avoid in actuality through the body. The way it's beyond reason, beyond the vision and the details. It also has the potential of all the actuality that's going to be done with the body, that will be through his toil for the duration of his days of his life.